Timberland. What's he like?
You know you kinda cute with the long braids. Got a little cool with your sunny shades on. I know that you're ready if you don't go. You know I'ma wait if you don't take long. The test to ride smooth down the Tennessee. Wait, I don't wanna say it, but I had to say it. We ain't have to do too much to show off, but a nigga had to prove a point. Hold up, I ain't even put my jewels on. I ain't even played my latest greatest song. I ain't even put my jewels on. Now don't it look so beautiful? Beauty, don't it look so beautiful? Had to clean up, don't it look so beautiful? Beauty, beauty, clean up, had to clean up. I ain't even put my jewels on. I ain't even played my latest song. I ain't even put my jewels on. Had to make a point 'cause I gotta try to be too dope. Now don't it look so beautiful? Beauty, beauty.
And you can see the chap coming now, still in impeccable shape as he makes his way off the jet. Champ, all right, if we can just have one word, back up, one word, hey, back up, give us space. Come on, get in the car, man, come on.
A very, very warm welcome to everyone joining us here tonight, wherever you may be. It is wonderful. I'm looking at the chat, people dialing in from all over the place. Hello, Adama from the Ivory Coast. We've got Ryan dialing in from Kenya, Lul from Ethiopia, Obosa from Nigeria, Terrence from Texas, from US, Vanessa from Ghana. Guys and ladies and gentlemen, it is so great to have you joining us here today for what's going to be a really, really exciting and insightful conversation. If you haven't yet represented yourself or where you are dialing in from, please do take a moment to let us know where you are, just so we can celebrate, the fact that we're dialing in from all over the world for this session. And we are privileged to have the time and space to be with each other here today. So today, as you guys know, we're going to have a fireside chat, a conversation with Terrence Taylor, who I'll be introducing in a few minutes. I want to make sure as we enter this conversation that you're here, that you're present, and you're ready to have a conversation. That means that you're also participating in this conversation, right? You're going to be giving your input, you're going to be sharing your insights, you're going to be asking questions as much as I am. So I hope you're ready for this session, because I'm ready. For those of you who don't know me, who haven't seen me before, my name is Samir. I work here at ALX and The Room, and I'm a fellowship experience specialist. I'll be your host here today, and my job is just to, either ask some questions on your behalf, ask some questions that I've prepared as well, but really to make sure that all of us here are having a good time and are going to have a really insightful conversation. The agenda is pretty simple for today. Some quick housekeeping rules to make sure that we're all on the same page. We're going to do a quick check-in. I want to get some of your thoughts at the beginning of the session. We're going to move into the fireside chat, the conversation with Terrence. We're going to have time for a Q&A with Terrence as well. Then we're going to make some time for, some feedback for you to let us know and let Terrence know what the session was like for you. And then we'll close off the session at that point. Some ground rules. At this point, I think so many of you have joined here before that you probably know what they are, but just a reminder to all of you to know that, or a reminder to use the chat liberally. In this space, this chat box is really, the place where each of us can contribute our insights, our ideas, our reflections. Anytime you hear something that resonates with you, let us know in the chat. Anytime you may disagree with what someone has said, feel free to put that in the chat as well in a respectful manner. But this is really where we all get to connect with each other as a community. So again, a reminder, use the chats. I want to hear from you. Secondly, as you saw on the agenda, we're going to have some time for a Q&A. So any questions that you have for Terrence, please make sure to put them in that separate box over there in the Q&A, because that way we make sure, we can keep track of the questions, because I know the chat is going to be buzzing from all of you sharing your insights, reflections. And so please do make sure to put them separately in the Q&A section. And last but not least, guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, be present. Come here. You have taken this time to invest in yourself, in your learning, to learn about the journey of Terrence, to engage in this conversation with each other. So please, I encourage you, whatever you may be doing, to come here, be with us, and let us enjoy this opportunity for us to connect as a community. Now, I want to kick this conversation off with a pretty simple, maybe it's not simple, but a really important question. And the question is, what makes you feel alive? I want you to just think about that for a second. What is something that you can do, something that you engage in, something that you spend your time doing that really just lights your fire, gets you excited, makes you feel so alive? I want you to drop in the chats what that is for you. What makes you really feel alive? I see Irene dropping the chat, learning something new. Learning something new, I love that. Bertha says baking. Oh, baking is great. I love cookies, chocolate chip cookies. Vanessa says music and reading. Listening to music, cooking, playing chess, helping people, and listening to music. Again, learning something new, learning new things, or doing something new. Good music and inspirational talks. Learning something new, making Africa a great place. I love that. Having fun, again, music, cooking, and reading, some commonalities here. Terrence sharing Africa's future and thinking about how to contribute to Africa by leapfrogging by 2050. We're gonna have some time to dive into that. So looking forward to that. And Adwoa saying also reading and cooking. Fantastic. Engaging in social impact activities. Yes, Vivian, thank you for sharing that. Any more? What else makes you come alive? What gets you really excited? For me, I love listening to some good music and being inspired by all of you, being inspired by exciting ideas and people that are inspired and driven to live a life that's meaningful to them, right? Which I get every time I speak with you guys. Accomplishing tasks, crafting, nature, playing football, music. Solving a challenge for published video games, amazing. Giving people hope. Giving people hope. Thank you, Elijah. That's a great one. Being in church and around people I love. Guys, these are all fantastic, fantastic responses. And there's a reason why I asked this question as well, about what makes you feel alive, because in many ways, feeling alive is the predecessor for us to really making other people feel alive and bringing out the best in the people around us. So thank you, guys. Keep it going in the chat. Keep your insights coming, sharing throughout the session as we dive into the fireside chats. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a really exciting guest joining us here today. I've had the privilege of speaking with Terrence just a few weeks ago. We had a fantastic conversation, and Terrence has an incredible background. Originally from Sierra Leone, moved away from the continent, went to the United States, went to 2 Ivy League schools, worked at Google, worked at Meta, is working at Meta right now as a director, and has just a wealth of experience and insights to share with all of us here today. So I'm excited to invite you to the stage, Terrence, to join me here and just give you a big welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time and being with us here today. And I'd love to just kick it off, Terrence, by asking you the very same question. I know you responded in the chat, but I'd love to hear from you directly, Terrence. what makes you feel alive?
Well, first of all, Samir and everyone who's here, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with you all and to share my experience and hopefully some insights that would motivate, inspire. Africa makes me feel alive, and I've been out of my continent for some time, probably half of my life. So I grew up in Sierra Leone until the age of 9, came to the US, and then by the age of 26, left the US to go work abroad in many different countries: India, Mexico, Singapore, Russia, Indonesia. We can get into any of that if that's interesting. By 2001, I had the opportunity to, I just thought, I want to be like you, Terrence, when I grow up. Yeah, for sure. And you know, when I had a chance to come back to when I had a chance to go back to the continent, it was to be a CFO for an internet startup called Africa.com. And this was back in 2001. And that was my introduction to the wonderful country of South Africa. And that was the first country I chose to make home. And then I stayed in South Africa for 16 years before returning to the US to join big tech. So that's like a whirlwind of my experience. But the years that I was in South Africa really, really made me feel alive. I had a chance to visit and work in, I think, like 20 African countries. So I still have a lot to learn about our continent because, you know, our continent is not a monolith, but I teach an elective at the Gordon Institute of Business Science on business opportunities and innovations in Africa. I've been teaching it for 17 years, and I try to impart to the MBAs what Africa is really all about and all the opportunities that the continent has. So now that I'm here in the US and I'm turning 53 next year, I'm thinking homeward bound. Like, I want to get back to my beloved continent and do everything I can to help it leapfrog by 2050. Let me pause there. I can go on. So let me pause there.
I think it's a great way to start. And I think this is also the perfect time, Terrence. We have to see the shirt that you're wearing. We see it says Africa at the top, but what is it really saying at the bottom there?
So can y'all see that?
There you go. Africa, your time is, we can't see the bottom.
Your time is now.
Your time is now. I think it's a beautiful shirt. And I think it speaks exactly to your passion of what you just shared with us and what makes you come alive. And I do hope to explore that a little bit further with you, Terrence, just to understand what potential you're seeing in Africa. You know, what gets you excited about the potential and the people, and you know, what makes you want to come back also to the continent. But before we get into all of that, Terrence, I'd love to hear a bit more about your origin story. Sure. We know that you come from Sierra Leone. You just mentioned that at the age of 9, you know, you left the continent. But just give us a sense of what life was like for Terrence growing up.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Freetown, Sierra Leone. For those who know Sierra Leone well, I was born in a village that would be called Waterloo. But if you're Sierra Leonean or Liberian like my brother Usman, you probably say Watalo, right? And I was born in my grandfather's house. My mom, my poor mother, late mother now, she carried me for 11 months. I think I was quite comfortable, didn't want to quite come out, right? But I was born after 11 months and grew up very happy in Freetown, Sierra Leone. For those who know Sierra Leone well, I grew up in Kisii Road on Terry Street. Waterloo has always sounded American in my ears, it's true. And so anyway, growing up in Sierra Leone was wonderful. I played a lot. I was very, very much a stubborn and obstinate little boy. I didn't want to listen too much to my grandmother who was raising me. So my grandfather, when I turned 9, sent a telegram to my father to say, my father was in the US. Sorry, guys, my notifications are going crazy. My father was in the US, and my grandfather sent him a message to say, you need to send for this boy urgently. Otherwise, he's going to become wayward. So as a result of that bad behavior, my dad did send for me. So I'm his youngest child, and he sent for me when I was 9. And just to tell y'all this origin story really nicely, my grandfather's message to my dad resulted in my grandmother then sending a telegram to my dad, this was 1980, right? That your son is on the way to America, because my dad had sent a ticket and all that stuff, but the way to communicate was by telegram. So my dad did not get the telegram. So I arrived in the US at Washington Dulles International Airport. Pan Am Airways, which is now defunct, was the airline I flew on, and no one was there to pick me up. So the airline crew members were frazzled. I could sense that they were frazzled. So they were talking a lot and like figuring out what to do with me. So what they decided to do with me was put me in their employees lounge. Now this was long before we had like these frequent flyer lounges, and there was a television there. So they put me in front of the television. Tom and Jerry was playing, for those who know US cartoons, and they gave me some goldfish snacks called Pepperidge Farm goldfish snacks, and I still love Pepperidge Farms to this day, and I still love Tom and Jerry to this day, and I passed the entire day with basically in this lounge. And then when it was time to knock off, they still had been unable to get in touch with my dad. Oh, I forgot one important part. My grandmother had thought ahead and gave me a piece of paper that basically said who I was, who my dad was, and how to get in touch with him. So I think that's what really saved me. So they had been trying to get in touch with my dad the entire day, but they were unable to get in touch with him. Finally, when it was time to knock off, one of the employees said, okay, look, this address is very close to where I live. Let me take him and see if his dad is actually home. Maybe he's just not answering the phone. And sure enough, when they got to the house, the apartment, my dad was there, and that's my coming to America story. Slightly different from Eddie Murphy's, but a true story.
That's an amazing story, Terrence, and it's so funny that you remember that so clearly. Obviously, goldfish has become a core part of who you are today as well.
Yes.
But that's awesome. And so you were 9 years old at the time arriving in the United States. Do you still remember what that experience was like for you?
Oh, yes.
How was that? Coming from Sierra Leone, from the African continent into Dallas, you had Tom and Jerry to keep you happy. What was that like for you?
So look, the US is a rough place when you're a young African, right? I went to school in the District of Columbia. That's where I could get into school, because Maryland was a bit more difficult at that time if you didn't have like your papers yet, right? So it took some time for me to get citizenship. Got citizenship at the age of 18. But anyway, went to school in DC. And, for some of us who are familiar with the African-American divide, that was very, very, very present, because the school I went to was predominantly Black. So there were lots of teasing and lots of misinformation and education about like Africa. So a lot of the kids didn't really understand that Africa is more modern than has been depicted in the West. And that's one of the themes that I think many of us deal with, is this notion of our continent being backwards and that type of stuff. Ridiculous. But anyway, so I had kids asking me questions like, do you swing from trees because they've seen Tarzan? Like, how do you go to the bathroom, because they don't think Africa has bathrooms? And I say Africa because for them, Sierra Leone is Africa, right? Anyway, but what ended up happening is very early in my time in the US, hip hop started trying to reconnect with the continent. And that made a really positive difference, because then by the time I was at Brown University in 1989, a lot of the kids were trying to get back and reconnect with their African roots. So that made a huge difference. And there was this seismic shift in the treatment of me as an African, and an understanding that Africa is more advanced than they believe. So one of the things that makes me passionate is I want Africa to reclaim what we are, who we are, and what we have and what we do, so the rest of the world can begin to respect Africans a bit more. But that was a rough introduction to the US. It also just fueled my desire to show that as an African, there's much that I'm going to do. Just watch this space.
Amazing. Unbelievable, quite frankly, including the seismic shift that you're talking about, that hip hop brought, and that shift that you literally experienced firsthand in the culture and still now are experiencing. That's pretty amazing to hear. So, at the time, so, up until the point, and you mentioned that this shift started happening in the 80s when you first went to Brown. At the time, Terrence, when you were when you were just graduating out of high school and going into the university, at that age, what were your aspirations? What were you dreaming about becoming or doing?
Yeah. True story. I was dreaming about Africa, right? I was dreaming about what would be the career opportunities that would allow me to return to the continent of Africa.
Mm,
And I want to share something here, and this is going to connect some disparate dots and threads. Technology is creating so many opportunities, and I've been blessed to work at Meta, as you said. I'm working at Meta now, and to have worked at Google. So I've seen firsthand what is coming, and it's just amazing,
mm,
right? So why am I sharing this? I grew up, like many people of my generation, understanding that you got to go to school, you got to get good grades so you can get a good job,
mm.
as if that was the only way that you could actually live and take care of your family or to really make an impact. But I've always wanted to make more of an impact, and I realize now that I should have actually followed more of an entrepreneurial path. So for all the folks who are on this call, I want to encourage you to think very broadly about what are you passionate about? Because believe it or not, technology is going to enable a lot of us to pursue our passions, right? And I'm not in any way trying to downplay having great jobs, because I've been really blessed to work with great companies, and it's put me in a situation where I can take care of my family. But at this stage, I am so ready to do more. So at that time, to answer your question fully, I was thinking what I wanted to do was to figure out how to start a job that would allow me to create databases of information about African companies, so investors in the West would be able to invest in these companies. That's what I was thinking at that time when I was graduating from Brown.
So much we can
No.
get into and jump into and I think one question that I have to ask at this point, Terrence, is over time, Africa has been a deep passion for you since you were young, and it remains to this day. When you are speaking to someone who doesn't have a real understanding of the continent or its people, what do you like to showcase? What do you point to for you personally? What do you look at on the continent of Africa and think, wow, this is the potential. This is the opportunity. What excites you really about Africa?
Everything. Right. So in speaking to others, most of the time, for those who know the continent, it's not really a lot that you have to say. They understand that our future is now. They understand that in the tech space, for example, Africa has produced some world-class products. And they understand that we have the opportunities in places like Kenya and places like South Africa, where we're seeing the startup ecosystem for tech like really blossoming, in places like Nigeria, that Africa is going to be a player in global spaces. So whether it's fintech, right, whether it's mobile money, which I know is an old story now, but like what M-Pesa did globally, many people understand that, yay, and this came out of Africa, right? And also you're seeing that sports leagues are starting to look at the continent as a place of opportunity. So one of my best friends from Brown University is Victor Williams, also a Sierra Leonean, and he's the CEO of NBA Africa. So the fact that the NBA is building franchises in Africa, it's huge, right? I foresee a situation where we would see an expansion from other leagues, like especially in the US, but I think globally where people will come in, right? You know that countries like China, for example, definitely see the opportunity space in Africa, and China has been doing a lot over the last 2 decades to carve out a space for itself in Africa. Controversially, but I know there are debates as to whether they're colonizing Africa or not, but that's probably a conversation for another day. We have that conversation and debate every year in my global elective that I told you about, that I teach the MBAs in Gibbs. So there's so much that's happening in Africa. And for me personally, the spaces that I see that I can contribute and help Africa to leapfrog are healthcare, for example. I believe Africans tend to receive really poor healthcare. When I got back to the US, I actually realized that it's actually a global phenomenon, because here's the setup. Most of us, when we have to go see a doctor, we have to find time to leave home and then go to the doctor's office. In Africa, more than anywhere else, though, like, you can show up with an appointment and you still have to wait for hours. And then in Africa, as in the West, what happens? You see a nurse who asks you questions, maybe you fill in a questionnaire, and then the doctor comes in based on what you shared with the nurse. The doctor says, hey, Samir, I think you might be suffering from X. Here's a prescription, or a script, as we'll call it in many African countries. You go, you fill the script in, and that's it. In 2015, when I was working at Discovery in South Africa, so Discovery is a financial services company, but it started as a health insurer. I had this realization that, wait a second, technology can allow for the disruption of this model. Like, it makes no sense that this has to be a face-to-face interface, right? Why can't this be a screen to face? Why can't we figure out, and I didn't understand the technology at the time, but why can't we figure out ways to have you interact with a doctor, but digitally, and then the prescriptions are filled for you, and then it can even be delivered to you, right? So we started a company called Leapfrog Africa Healthcare Solutions back in 2015. And we were working very hard on that. And we realized by 2016 that the regulations require that you have a face-to-face interaction with the doctor. But this was pre-COVID, right? And then Google came calling in. I decided to answer the siren song, and I knew it was a siren song, but I thought I can learn a lot from Google, so let me go and figure it out. And I'm so grateful that I've done that, because now I see technologically, Leapfrog Africa Healthcare Solutions is going to be a reality. The only question is, are we going to be part of that? Because there's so many startups who had similar ideas and they've launched and they're doing telemedicine, but I think it's such a huge space. So anyway, let me pause, because I can wax lyrical. Let me pause and see if there's anything you or the audience want to say or interact with me on.
There's a really important point that I would love for you to elaborate on a little bit more. And in fact, I saw that Emmanuel asked a question in the chat, asking, is it that Africa looks great from abroad because most Africans want to leave the continent? Now, Terrence, you're an African that left the continent.
Yep.
And, in many ways, you're living, for some people, you could say the African dream, right? Or even the American dream, right? You are an African, you left the continent, you're working with some of the biggest brands in the world, with the smartest people in the world, having an incredible impact. And the question is, this is the aspiration. In fact, I want to actually just ask people in the chat, who here has aspirations to leave the continent and either go to Silicon Valley, the States, or Shenzhen, whatever it may be? Who dreams about that? Beverly does, Dennis does, Emmanuel does. Yeah, there's quite a few, and you're definitely not alone. Terrence, make the case to our audience, both from your experience, should people be aspiring to leave the continent, or what are you seeing? How would you kind of respond to this aspiration people have?
Look, I think it's a very natural aspiration, right? Growing up in Sierra Leone, even at the age of 9, although I hadn't formed a worldview yet, I heard many people dreaming about going to America. So when my father sent for me to come and live in America, I was a 9-year-old boy excited to come and spend time with my father. When I got to America, I shared with you how rough the landing was. So America has never had that allure that it does for many people, right? But I am deeply appreciative of the opportunity that America has given me. So my kids, who are 15 and 13, Claudina and Gilbert, are here now, right? And they came 2 years ago. Yet at the stage of my life that I'm at, I would love to take them back to Africa today. They clearly want to stay. They're enjoying high school. They grew up in South Africa and Kenya, right? They were born in South Africa. Their mothers, my wife Winnie is from Kenya, so grew up in Kenya. I see in them the same type of desire as many people who want to come to America. And for those who want to come to America or to leave Africa and go to another country, I would say just be clear, what do you want from that other country, right? Because there's so much that we can do in and for Africa. And if we're leaving for economic opportunities, for example, it might be because we have been raised like I was to understand that the only way you get economic opportunity is through a job, is through employment. In fact, I think Fred Schloneker is an inspiration for many of us in terms of what he's been able to do, the institutions that he's built, the lives that he's touching and changing based on that desire and that drive to do something big for Africa. And the one thing I've come to understand is if you really want to experience the West, come to the West and experience the West. But hopefully that would inspire you to want to go back and do something big in Africa. Because I think the bigger the dream and the more of us that have really big dreams for the continent, the better it's going to be for us, our kids, and generations to come after us.
Inspiring, Terrence. I think another point that I want to get into from you, you'd mentioned it before, you are at the center of so many changes that are coming in the world. By this, I mean technologically. You're working at Meta right now. You were working at Google for quite some time as well, and you're just surrounded by all of these technologies.
Yep.
And you had already mentioned how some of these technologies are just going to make it so much more possible for people to pursue their passions, and not only to dream big, as you're encouraging us all to do, but also to actually make those dreams come true. Talk to us about what you're seeing. What are some of the exciting opportunities that are emerging that you think all of us here in the room should become aware of and realize?
Okay, had to go on mute there. The water went down the wrong way. Look, the main game right now is generative AI. If you are not aware, OpenAI has now released a product that allows you to create your own GPT. Let me pause and say that again for those who may not know. If you go to OpenAI and you are a subscriber, you can now create your own GPT. That is a seismic shift in terms of what's possible. So I'll give you two applications that I immediately created with this tool. My daughter Claudina is an 11th grader in the US. She's 15, but due to good Kenyan education, she's ahead by 2 years in the States, right? But trigonometry is not something that the teacher is teaching her very well. So I created a GPT called Trig Tutor for her. And I asked her to test it, and she tested. She's like, wow, Daddy, this is really helpful. This is really good. I have family members and loved ones who suffer from sickle cell anemia. And one of the most difficult parts of that disease is if you've survived it up to like your 40s, sometimes it becomes really difficult when crises happen and you need intravenous medication and treatment to find veins. So I created a sickle cell anemia tutor, doctor, right, GPT, to provide that type of help and assistance. And why did I do these two things? I just wanted to see if things that matter to me in my life, this GPT product would allow me to create something. And literally, it took me 5 minutes to create each of those things. Now, Samir and folks that are here with us, I have big dreams. I have big goals. So now I'm thinking, yes, finally, the technology exists to allow me and all of us who have ideas to be able to create services and products to help. One last one to share, Samir, one last one. Samir knows I'm very passionate about taxes, and I'll share the story very quickly, folks. When I came back to work for Google in 2016, I ended up between 2016 and 2021 paying close to $2 million in taxes. And let me just upfront admit that means that, yes, I did earn a lot of money, right? And I paid 60+% of the money I earned in taxes. And it turns out it's because I was not tax savvy. I was very tax naive. So I shared this with Samir, folks. I decided, you know what? I am going to become sophisticated in taxes, and I'm going to study the US tax code. And I'm going to qualify as a tax professional so I can help other people who are highly paid and highly taxed not pay so much money in taxes, so they can save what I could have saved. Folks, with GPT, I realized that it's possible for me to scale my knowledge and my insight. And eventually, I could even get to the stage where it can be a global product as opposed to just a US product. So I've just given you 3 different GPTs that I'm thinking about, but that's what the technology does. All these things that I've dreamt about doing for Africa, for example, are now possible. All these things that I'm learning that I think will have application down the line in Africa are possible, because eventually our governments in Africa, I think, will become more sophisticated with taxes, for example. I know South Africa has a really sophisticated tax regime, and I still want Africans to meet our tax obligations, but not overpay. Let me pause there. Something you wanted to add?
Just to double click, if you will, or expand on that point that you're sharing. I mean, with these generative AI models and artificial intelligence as one of the key drivers, I think, of a lot of innovation and change that's going to come in the coming decade and decades. Each of us as individuals are just, we're like, the exponential technology is making our own capabilities exponential. So you can take the mind and skills and knowledge of a Terrence and very easily programming it into a bot that can then be leveraged by any of us and millions and even billions of people, just by one person. I think that's a really important thing to understand, that you can 100x yourself and your knowledge and skills and abilities. And I think the next thing that I want to get into with you, Terrence, is but really leadership developments and people development. Because if this is true with exponential technologies, even these bots, that we can, let's say, 10x ourselves. A 10x of a person like this is far less than a 10x of a person like this. I want to understand from you, Terrence, over the years, I think probably you would agree with me that a lot of the results that you've been able to achieve in your life, going to Brown University, getting 2 degrees, working at Google, Meta, all these crazy, amazing companies, achievements, and which are only going to be small relative to the bigger goals that you have for your own life. But talk to us a bit about how you have been able to achieve this. Like, how do you as an individual make sure you work hard and achieve these big goals and just develop yourself? That's what I really want to understand.
So this is such an important topic and such an important question. And my understanding now, as I approach 53, is that I probably could have done and been even more. So let me share why I say that. Now, like many of us, like many of you, I grew up with an understanding that there's some things that I'm good at. Yet I grew up not really believing that I should dare to do and to be more. Right? It's almost as if there's a preordained lane for us in terms of, hey, if you're good in maths and sciences, then you can go and do these types of roles or these types of jobs, right? And again, not many examples of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs who are creating new organizations and new opportunities. But why was I able to to accomplish things? So I'm going to go deep and potentially vulnerable, but because I think many of us probably have similar experiences. So when I got to the U.S., my dad was married to my stepmother, Pauline, my late dad, right? And Pauline was a person who was really not good for raising children. Right? So I grew up with a stepmother who told me that, you're a bastard, you're a liar, you'll never amount to anything. And instead of destroying me, what she fueled was a deep desire to prove her wrong. I had this burning desire to show Pauline that I was no one's bastard, because in Sierra Leone, like many African countries, we don't even believe in this notion of half brothers and sisters, much less bastards, right? It's a very Western construct. Yeah, evil stepmothers, right? Right. So when I started leaning into this belief, because she fueled this belief in me that I'm going to prove her wrong, then I just started excelling in anything I applied myself to. I'm very nerdy, if you can't tell. So like, I love learning anyway. I was decent in sports, but especially in track. I ended up being a state champion in Maryland. There were all these after school activities that I decided to get into. But ultimately, what Pauline helped me to see is that if I applied myself and believed in myself, then I could achieve things. Second person who was really instrumental in helping me was Mrs. Pratt, my high school guidance counselor. So I just ended up having a really good relationship with her. And she used to tell me, kiddo, you can do anything you set your mind to, right? American woman, just helping this Black African child, right? And she also used to tease me all the time and says, you know what, you're like a bad penny. Every time I show up, you just turn up. I was like, Mrs. Pratt, that's because I adore you, right? But Mrs. Pratt, before I even knew there were such things as Ivy League schools, was the one who said to me, you know what, in 11th grade, she's like, kiddo, when do you want to go to school? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, what college do you want to go to? Like, I don't understand the American college system. I would love to go to a good school. Like, what do you understand to be a good school? I didn't know. So then I said, you know what, but I do want to go to Morehouse. She's like, I think that's a great school. Like, anywhere else? I was like, well, I heard that Tufts, has a great like international relations program, and I want to study international. She's like, okay, that's very good. She's like, well, have you ever considered the Ivy League schools? Like, what are those? She's like, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Brown, Dartmouth, Cornell. I was like, what? I have no idea what those are. She's like, well, these are like the best schools. And given how well you're doing, I think you can get into these schools. I was like, you really think? She's like, yeah, I believe in you, kiddo. And so when it came time to write my essays for Brown, I remember another woman helping me out. And this was my English teacher, Mrs. Markham. So she used to, when I was talking, she used to tell me like, Terrence, you have to articulate, enunciate, right? So she helped me to speak English better, but she also believed in me. So when I started writing these essays for Brown, there was this assignment she had given us on what does it mean to be an American? And I wrote that I didn't consider myself an American, my first draft. And she said, Terrence, I'm not sure this is your best work. I was like, what do you mean, Mrs. Markham? Because I was getting A's in her class, right? She's like, well, it's like you're not fully engaging with this subject. It's almost as if you're saying like, I don't consider myself an American, so I don't want to write the essay. I think your story is a very powerful story, and I think you should tell your story, and tell your story from the point of view that you belong here. All the things you've gone through, you belong. So I ended up like rewriting that assignment, and that became my essay for all my college applications about how my experience of coming to the US and learning about the US and some of this hard landing that I talked about, but coming to the acceptance that since I'm here, I can consider myself an American, right? That was an essay that ended up getting me into these schools, right? But what I'm trying to say is this: I don't know if there's a formula, but I think there are ingredients. I don't know if there's a recipe, but I know that there are ingredients. So if you want to achieve things, first thing, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Let me say it one more time. Believe in yourself. Second thing, have confidence that you can do it. And if you don't feel you're competent, have confidence that you can develop the competence to do it. Third thing, apply yourself. And in those moments where you have doubt, rely on your faith. If you believe that faith is belief in the absence of evidence, rely on your faith, because eventually you will get there. There's nothing that I've accomplished that cannot be accomplished by anyone on this call. I firmly believe that. It depends on what you want to do. If I may digress slightly, I've recently started understanding that the actor, Terrence Howard, most of us know him for his great work in shows like Empire, the series, Best Man, right? Hustle and Flow. Terrence Howard has spent 40 plus years of his life basically developing a new math and a new physics. And he has patents in math and physics. Folks, if you want to understand the importance and the power of belief and acting with confidence and relying on faith when you have doubts, do yourself a favor. Study what Terrence Howard is up to, because it shows that just because you excel in one arena, you don't have to be pigeonholed. What you believe here, right? And what your spirit or your soul or your ancestors, for those of us who believe in ancestors, I believe in them, are telling you, you must do and can do. Believe in it. Okay, let me stop there. And sorry, so I saw someone ask, did I say that you can achieve what I achieve? Yes, I believe firmly you can achieve what I achieve, and maybe even more, and most likely more. It just depends on what are you wanting to do. You have to be so clear. I want to do this. So Samir, like I shared with you, I said I want to get this tax qualification. Is it crazy for someone who is in human resources to get a qualification in one of the most difficult subjects in the US, taxes? Of course it's crazy, but I applied myself because I believed that I would get it. Okay.
Belief in yourself, belief to achieve, belief to make a difference. Terrence, as my final question to you,
yes,
before we move over to the audience here, and for those of you who haven't yet, please make sure if you have a question for Terrence, drop it in the Q&A. Terrence, what now at this stage? You've alluded to it, but I'd love to hear you express it. What is your own vision for the continent?
Thank you for asking. I am so clear on this, I'm going to share it. I've recently understood, and this came from the troubles with taxes, that it is my destiny to help, well, first of all, to build intergenerational wealth so Africa can leapfrog, and to help others, and especially Africans, build intergenerational wealth so Africa can leapfrog and sustain. So I've been spending time writing very clearly what I want to do. So here it goes. I want to build a business empire that's centered around a portfolio of 1.25 million rental property units in Africa and throughout the world. And here's the why. I want to provide luxury spaces and experiences, and technology-enabled products and services so Africans and people throughout the world can live with deep dignity and experience the highest sense. Actually, let me take out the word sense, and experience the highest well-being. As and when I'm able to put the building blocks of this vision, this destiny into place, I'll be doing my part to contribute to building institutions that would help Africa to leapfrog. And these would be institutions in the healthcare space, institution in the housing space, institution in the education space, and so on. So let me pause there. That's my vision. It's so clear to me.
That's beautiful, Terrence. Honestly, beautiful, beautiful. Let's see some reactions and emojis. Let's get some fire to this vision because it's beautiful and it's needed. And Terrence is going to make it happen. I believe that now because Terrence believes in himself, first and foremost. Terrence,
yep.
There's some interesting questions that are coming in to the Q&A. So I'm going to start going through some of them here. We got a question coming in from Topman, Paul Dyke, who's asking, do I need to be as exposed as you are to be able to solve big problems? I mean, you know, would you have had this level of exposure if you didn't work for Google and Meta? Can I find myself experienced enough to make the whole of Africa better? What are your thoughts on this exposure?
So you said it's Tubman, the first name?
Tubman, yeah.
Tubman, yes. Yes, yes, yes. So I was privileged to work in these companies. These companies have created products that can help you to have these experiences. What do I mean by that? When I started my journey to understand taxes better, like many of us, I went to YouTube University. I didn't have to go to Brown University. I went to YouTube University. And YouTube University showed me the knowledge and the insights that I needed to begin my journey. So Tubman, I'm not sure what it is you want to do on behalf of our wonderful, beloved continent of Africa, but just you become clear on what it is you want to do. And then you start that journey of searching for the resources. And so many resources are now available online to help you be more precise in terms of what you want to do and how you want to do it. Second thing, Tubman, do yourself a favor, figure out who else is doing what it is you want to do. And to the extent that you can follow them on YouTube University or any of these social media platforms, do so. To the extent that you have a network like ALX to help you connect with them directly, even if it's for just 15 minutes, Tubman, do that for yourself. Because that connection would rub off and you will be so inspired. I've already shared this once, I'll share it again. When I started thinking about what do I want to do once I turned 53, May 19, 2024, I'd had a conversation with Fred Swaniker, who I knew in South Africa before he built all these wonderful institutions, ALA, ALX, ALU, The Room, you know? And it became clear to me that one of Fred's superpowers is building institutions. So I asked Fred, I said, would you mentor me when I'm ready to build institutions? And he said, yes. So Fred, June 1st, 2024, I'm coming for my mentorship. So Tubman, yes, you can do it.
Excellent. You can do it. A question from Gabriel. How do we cultivate a mindset like yours, Terrence? It's admirable. What can I do to really feed my mind in the way that you've been able to feed yours?
Thank you so much for asking, Gabriel. This is a conversation I'm having with my daughter, Claudina, 15. So Claudina loves Lana Del Rey. And for those who know Lana Del Rey, she's a musician in the US and she has a very unique style and like very unique content. I find her to be very depressing, right? So I'm saying to Claudina, be mindful of what you allow in because it really is going to influence you. So Gabriel, the music you listen to is very, very important because it does connect with you at a very deep level. So listen to music that uplifts you and listen to music that makes you feel that it's possible. Now, if I digress briefly, I used to call myself a small boy from Freetown. And then to his eternal credit, Burna Boy came out and called his seminal album African giant. And at that stage, like most of us, including me, was like, what's giant about him? Like, he's just an artist. But he had a vision and he saw himself in a certain way. And now the world does see him as an African giant. So his music, for those who like Burna Boy, I think will make you feel powerful and that you can do things, right? What else? Gabriel, the most important thing for me as a nerd, I confessed right up front, and for my Nigerian friends, my confession, I am a nerd. So I read very, very broadly. And what do I read? I try to read things that show me what's possible. I try to read things about people who have done the things that I want to do. So, Gabriel, that's how you cultivate this mindset. Last part, I'm going to get spiritual for a minute. I grew up confused about faith in terms of Christianity because I grew up a Christian. When I read the Bible from the point of view of a teenager, taking things literally, the Bible didn't make sense to me. So I had many questions, I had many doubts. As I approached 53, I now realized that, whoa. I don't even understand what I was reading. And my lens of trying to take the Bible literally was the wrong lens. Because what I'm starting to understand that's in the Bible is not what's necessarily taught in the churches that I've attended. And what am I saying here? It's very clear to me now that the Bible, like many religious faiths and many of our pre-Western religious faiths in Africa, are saying something very different about who we are and what we are in this world. If you really dig deep, you will understand that we are people who have the divinity in us. When Jesus says that my Father and I are one, if you understand that in a spiritual way, he's literally saying that God is in him. And if God is in him, for those who are Christians, then God is in you, right? And I am a Christian, right? And I've spent some time trying to understand this at a deeper level. So basically, it comes down to this very, very powerful identification with what's divine and therefore what's possible. Because if you have the divinity in you, everything is possible. In Sierra Leone growing up, I often would hear that when we lost loved ones and family members, they've gone to the true world, right? The implication in my young mind, because I told you I left when I was 9, is this must be a fake world or a false world. And increasingly what I'm understanding is that, yes, spiritually speaking, this world has a role to play, but there's no need to fear anything in this world. Let me say that again. There's no need to fear anything in this world. You set your mind to it. You profess that that's what you want. You believe that you can do it. You will do it. No doubts in my mind.
Beautiful, Terrence. I have to ask you to follow up on some of the previous things that you mentioned. What kind of music are you listening to now? What's feeding your mind?
So I do my confession right here. So Afro beats just completely rocked my world from 2020. And Vigro Deep in particular, and Keystar, the drum programming and patterning in that song, I think he's a genius, right? I've said that to folks and they're like, yeah. I'm like, I think Dr. Dre has nothing on Vigro Deep. I hope he would live long and he would make great music. And for my Kenyans, the way I was able to win my wife's heart was like in 2002 when I was doing a lot of work in Kenya, I came across this late artist named Issa. And he had only one album, but man, he was a brilliant musician, right? So Issa's music is something I still listen to this day, right? And of course, as an African, anyone in the world right now, Afro beats has basically won our hearts. So like I continue to listen to Afro beats. But now what's interesting, when I listen to those songs, I listen to those songs with much more inspiration than I understood before. So I'll give you an example. Davido was singing about 30 billion for the accounts, right? And at that time, it sounded like, wow, like 30 million, that's a lot of. But what I realize is, for those of us who think about money and think of money as a restriction, don't think about money as a restriction. Davido may have been boasting about 30 billion, but if you literally are dreaming that you can have 30 billion in your account, the only question is, well, how are you going to get that 30 billion? Let me say that again. If you are so bold to dream that big about a number like 30 billion, the question to ask yourself was, well, what will it take for me to get that 30 billion? Don't approach it from the point of view of doubting that you can get that 30 billion, right? So Davido. And of course, I grew up in the US, so hip hop and R&B. And there was a time when I was in love with Donna Letterman when I was at Brown University. She's originally from Jamaica, so I ended up getting into reggae music, dancehall especially, but also the great Honorable Robert Nesta Marley, Bob Marley. His music is timeless. So I've literally created recently, as I've gotten into this mode of like dreaming big and bigger, a playlist, right? And that playlist is for a webinar that I'll eventually run. And that playlist has all kinds of music. What's my favorite gospel music? So interestingly, in the gospel space, I like BB and CC Winans, and like their song Celebrate New Life really is motivating me right now, because at 53, I'm creating a new life. It's so clear to me. It's so clear to me, right?
Amazing. Music feeds you, feeds your soul, feeds your vision. It's such an important thing, feeds that belief. I think something I'm recognizing as well is just like that energy within you, right? That's where it all starts. You create within you first before you see it outside of yourself. Terrence, we have a lot of people in the audience who are in the early stages of their career. People either the first job, second job, maybe they're just transitioning also into technology. We have a lot of techies here, a lot of nerds. I'm also a nerd, fully confess to it as well. So we're here, we're on the same page, and I think many of us here in the room are. What advice would you give? I mean, what, from your perspective, working at Google and Meta, right? Like, what are these companies really looking for when they're looking for talent? And what is it that we can do here in this room to differentiate ourselves, or just to, to get access to some of these opportunities?
Yes, and before that, I did see a question about Vigro Deep. Lindiwe, I think it was. Lindiwe, yes, I listened to Vigro Deep. Yeah. And as I shared, Keystar was the moment that I fell in love with. I'm a piano. I also listened to Uncle Waffles, Durban Gogo, Kelvin Mo. I think it's Kelvin Momo, if I remember correctly, and the Twins, Major League DJs. So just so you know. Okay, so now let me answer this question, folks. It's such an important question for you. I want you to think about your early career as building the scaffolding for the future you. So as you think about what opportunities are available, understand that at this stage of your career, you do want to expose yourself to the best opportunities that you can get, especially if you're thinking about working, right, for someone else. And when you build that scaffolding for your future, there are some rules of this game. And one of those rules really comes down to the opportunity to build social capital wherever you're working. Because social capital is one of the most important predictors of your success and your ability to get the best out of your early career experiences. Well, there's a whole podcast I did with Debbie Goodman on social capital. So for those of you who want to get deeper into that, I recommend looking for that podcast, right? Social capital comes down to your understanding of what it is the seniors in your organization need, and your ability to cultivate mentorships and coaching from such seniors, so you can show up delivering what they need and also being given the opportunity to stretch and to grow. For those who are more likely to follow the entrepreneurial path, which in some ways I do wish I had followed earlier, sooner. It's so important for you to embrace that you don't need to know everything. You don't need to have figured out everything. What you need to be very clear on is what is the end state that you desire. And then how resilient are you going to be when the invariable, inevitable challenges show up? And for those who are pursuing the professions and work route, also resilience is one of those key traits. Don't take anything personally, no matter how personal the other person is intending it to be. You don't accept that it's personal. Eyes on the prize. Keep your vision ahead of you. You will do it.
A question coming from Elijah maybe speaks to this point a little bit. He's sharing, sometimes I feel like I don't know anything, especially when I'm with people I adore. Mm-hmm. Have you ever felt this way? And if yes, how do you come out of it?
Yeah, so Elijah, part of it might be humbleness. And I'm not going to psychoanalyze you, but if it was me feeling that way, or the times when I felt that way, let me answer the question that way. The times when I felt like I don't know anything, part of it was being humble, and part of it was also fear, right? Like, what if I profess that I know this and then I'm found out? So in leadership, we call that imposter syndrome. It's this notion that like maybe I don't belong in even ALX, right? And soon they're going to find out that I don't deserve to be here. You don't have to give into imposter syndrome. You do belong. So that's one. But secondly, to answer your question directly, if it is indeed factual that you don't know anything, then let's ask a useful question. What do you want to know, Elijah? What do you want to know? Are you clear on what you want to know? And once you've decided what you want to know, what will it take for you to learn it, to know it? Is it the experience of it? Because sometimes we discount experience over book understanding or reading something else that someone else has done. But if you don't know it and it just takes experience, go and get the experience.
Regina is asking, hey, Terrence, what advice would you give to your 22-year-old self?
Ooh, I would say, dude, Africa, stay. Stay in Africa, or because I was in the US at that stage, as soon as you finish Harvard Business School, take that dream that you have about this company that's going to provide data, go to the continent, whether that's Sierra Leone, South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, any of the northern countries. Pick an African country, go and just try. And you'll be surprised at how far you would have gotten. So that's one advice I would give to my 22-year-old self. The other advice I would give is, hey, to be balanced, you've been 22. You're going to have a really privileged life, and you should remain ever grateful that you've been given the opportunities that you were given, and you should continue in that belief that this opportunity must be used to benefit others, not just you. That's one thing my late dad instilled in me. May his soul rest in perfect peace. And thank you so much, Daddy, for that. This opportunity that you have in America, he used to say to me, many family members will never have this opportunity. And you're smart, yes, but there are family members who are smarter. And my dad being my dad, like, you're handsome, but there are family members who are more handsome. Right? And I just want you to take this opportunity and run with it, but remember, use it to benefit the family. But now, as I get older, I would say to my 22-year-old self, the family is the African continent. It's not just the Taylor family.
Building on this, Irene is sharing, your love for the African continent is great. And I happen to share the same feeling that you have about the continent. How can we change Africans' mindset to see the worth of the continent? Reason being that most people that I know don't speak well of the continent, but praise others.
Yeah, it's so important to meet people where they are and to have empathy. if our experience as Africans has been negative, it's very hard for us to see the positive. It may be that you are able to share your excitement and your passion like I'm sharing. And that is what is going to influence someone to think differently. If you try to force them to change their mind, then there's a very famous quote or poem that says, a man forced to change his mind against his will is of the same opinion still. A man forced to change his will is of the same opinion still. So you can't force someone to change their mind. You can expose them to your excitement, your belief in the positive future of Africa. And maybe we localize it, right? So Africa is a vast continent, as we're admitting, right? My passion and my belief is Pan-African, yet maybe we just start with the country or the community that we're in. What's your positive vision for your country? What's your positive vision for your community? What's your positive vision for yourself? That could be a way to start influencing people. Someone asked me to drop my social media handle on the chat, so I'm gonna do that on the chat. Go ahead and ask the next question. I'm just gonna drop my.
No, why you do that? There's only one question that I actually want to ask you, but also of the audience. But before we get to that, unfortunately, we are getting to the end of the session here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen briefly, where you can find a QR code to share your feedback. And then Usman is also going to put the link for the feedback form into the chat. And for a moment, he's gonna close the chat as well, just so that the link stays up for everyone to see. And then once we've done the feedback for 1 to 2 minutes, I'll play some music as well. We'll come back and then wrap it up with some final questions. So let me do that. Let me share my screen. Please fill in the form that Usman has shared, and then we'll be right back and start wrapping up the session. Again, this is an opportunity to share with us, to share with Terrence what you liked about the session, what you think could be improved as well. So please do take a moment to fill that in, and let us know when you're done in the chat in a minute.
Dear future me, will I ever smile again? Dear future me, will I die within? Question. Will I be alright? 'Cause I'm trying to maintain. I just like the night, try not to go insane. Will I ever move from this place? I can't give up. I don't wanna lose hope. I'm trying to conquer this thing I call life. Sometimes I wonder, the struggle is real.
Let us know in the chat when you are done. So Deborah's done, Grace is done. Maybe another 15 seconds or so.
If I can be honest, do I even have a chance? Dear future me, will I get to feel again? I've put this wall up. They won't hurt me again.
Let me cue off the music now for just a second. I'll stop sharing my screen. Now, there's one more question that I have for you, that I asked to you in a moment, Terrence. But before we do that, I want to ask the audience a question, which is, I want you to put into the chat your biggest takeaway out of everything that we've covered, from leapfrogging technologies in Africa, building GPT bots in 5 minutes, being grateful for what you have, believing yourself. What for you is your biggest takeaway? So go ahead and just drop it into the chat as it comes to you. So we give an opportunity for Terrence also to see what are some of the insights that people are getting or taking away with them. So Bosa's sharing to believe in yourself. It's a great one, such an important one. What other takeaways we have here? Africa has potential. Be confident and don't fear anything. Believe in yourself and don't forget your roots, Africa. The power and use case of GPT. Be confident, building institutions, believing in myself, fantastic here. Importance of building on social capital to have greater impact. If you don't know anything, if you feel like you don't know anything, ask yourself, what do I want to know? To prove yourself, overcoming imposter symptoms, work hard. These are all such fantastic insights. Please keep them coming. Terrence, my final question to you is, it's kind of a two-part question. The first is, what is the main takeaway that you hope to impart, or maybe that you've gotten as well, if you want to add that too. But secondly, if there's one specific action or thing that people can do practically to really improve or change the direction of their life in a positive way, what is that one thing that they could do?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for the comments. It's really fulfilling to see the lessons and the nuggets that you've taken out of this. And for me, the one thing that I would practically impart is, for those of us who are learners by reading, curate a list of books, articles, whether online or in magazines, that speak to what you want to know or what you're passionate about. For those who prefer to watch videos, there's so much content out there. Figure out, whether through YouTube University, TED Talks, right, Khan Academy, Udemy, any of these like online universities, even MIT and Harvard offers courses online. Like, what is it that you want to know? And you can utilize these things. And then the last concrete thing is, please do yourself a favor. Even if you don't like technology, start cultivating an appreciation for wanting to know what is coming in terms of technology. That's how, in my humble opinion, Africa is going to leapfrog. And that space and that particular domain is where the billions and the trillions are going to be created that are going to change Africa's future. And I do believe Africa can create its own Googles and Metas in the future. So right now, the US has this market. The US and the Chinese predominantly have this market of technology, especially with AI, cornered, but the possibilities are there. So that's what I'll share.
Terrence, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your inputs. We really appreciate you for being with us here today, for inspiring all of us. We do hope, I certainly do hope, to see you again soon. And thank you again so much. So please show some appreciation for Terrence for showing up here and giving us inspiration. And thank you, everyone, the audience, of course, for being with us here today. I hope you take some of these insights, really believe in yourself, cultivate that belief in yourself, and do something big. I hope Terrence, he certainly inspired me as well to dream bigger. And I hope that is inspiring your vision for who you want to be and what impact you want to have. So Terrence, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. Have a lovely, lovely evening and all the best.